Mother's Day has a way of sneaking up on you. But when it does, 1-800-Flowers makes it easy to send mom something beautiful, thoughtful, and worthy of everything she does. Right now, with double blooms from 1-800-Flowers, order 1 dozen roses and get another dozen for free. It's a bigger gesture with fresh, beautiful flowers arranged to make Mother's Day feel as special as she is. Make Mother's Day feel bigger with double blooms at 1-800-Flowers.com/podcast. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/podcast.
911, what's the nature of your emergency?
Welcome back to the Talk to Living podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Welton, joined by Sergeant Welton. Clint, how are you?
I'm good.
We had a strange thing happen to us yesterday where we're driving in your Cybertruck. And I don't know if you were in the middle of self-driving and not self-driving. And there was an individual on the side of the road. And it was one of those weird things where he started going and then you stopped and then you started going and then he stopped. And like he was obviously under the influence of methamphetamine and didn't know what he wanted to do. And after that, I had a conversation with you to where I said, I think you think that you're always driving a police vehicle.
and I answered, it's like, yeah, in this instance, I definitely could, I would have handled it the same way if I was at work, because just knowing people like that, because I drive around them all day long and they're out there and you got to kind of push your way through sometimes.
Yeah. And so I thought that today we could talk a little bit about basically the moment that you realize that the job has changed how you see people and the cynicism and the loss of innocence in first responders.
It's something that I think it's almost like a protection or a defensive mechanism that we turn on and off all the time. But for the most part, especially with being in law enforcement, you see yourself going down that where you inherently don't trust people because they're liars. They treat you a certain way and you have this reservation against anybody and everybody, and so you start configuring your normal response on a day-to-day incident, just like Ashley explained, of, well, this is how I would do it on duty.
And I think that for a lot of officers, what once felt like optimism about humanity, it just gradually gives way into that guardedness, that skepticism, and in some cases, just this full cynicism. And I think it's important for us to explore the line between healthy realism and basically damaging cynicism.
Yeah, because when you have that healthy realism, you're able to see that like 10,000 foot view, and it doesn't mean you have to be predominantly involved in that situation. But I tell my guys all the time is, we go out and we enforce the laws. We deal with people that lie to us, that cheat and steal and take from others. But we need to break out of that environment and go and talk to the normal people in this world too, to see how much support we truly have, and to be able to see the people that they don't have an agenda with what they're doing.
The psychological concept here is compassion fatigue and cognitive cynicism, and it develops after prolonged exposure to deception and suffering and human behavior at its worst. And I think that over time, the brain actually begins to predict negative outcomes. And, this is probably something, Clint, that until I just pointed that out, that you haven't really noticed happens, but I see it happen with nearly every first responder that works as a police officer.
And I think a lot of it has to stem from, we go through that worst case scenario. We go through these scenarios in our head when we're going to calls for service. We start looking at the if this then and being able to analyze those situations and go back and forth of how we're going to respond to these incidents, and we start sensationalizing all this stuff on such a regular basis, like we're training our minds of that's how we have to respond to things.
I love that it helps a lot of first responders to just be more cautious, because there's nothing that I hate more when you come home and you tell me a story about an officer that was like dilly-dallying around on the job. And there was another officer I talked to recently, and he showed me a picture of an officer that he was working with, and she didn't even have her firearm on. And he was explaining that like she'll often just leave it in her unit, like do weird ass, whole other thing. Okay. But I think that realism can be an asset on the job, but it becomes incredibly costly when it follows you into everyday relationships and interactions off duty.
And that makes me think of, we had this officer who was a trainee with us. He no longer works for us. He went to an actual different agency. When he first came over, he was going through training and he was not doing great, but was having some issues, but ended up ultimately lateraling to a different department. And when he went to the range to download his weapon to turn it in before he left, he literally just pulled out the mag and put the gun on the range table, and they go, there's one in the chamber, right? He's like, no, I don't do that. And everyone started looking at him like, what are you talking about? He's like, no, I refuse. You cannot make me carry around in the chamber.
Bye, Felicia.
Yeah. And that's where still to this day, it sounds like that he still believes that way, and he will not carry around in the chamber because of his military experience, that they do not allow the officers, the people who are carrying the sidearms on a daily basis, to have a round in the chamber.
Yeah, so that to me sounds like a little bit of ego work that needs to be worked through, and hopefully at his new department, they I don't know if you need new training for something like that, but that's a whole other thing too. And it's really important for us to kind of break down a little bit about what this type of cynicism looks like. And I think that for a lot of people, you just automatically start to assume the worst about people's intentions, and you have difficulty trusting new people or new situations.
When you start closing yourself off because of that cynicism, because you start assuming anybody and everybody's going to be responsive the same way, as meaning they're lying to you, they're always trying to get that leg up, and they're always trying to use you as a stepping stone to get whatever goal they want to achieve. That's where we start building up those walls more and more, and it makes it harder for us to tear those walls down. So we stop trusting people, we stop looking out for one another, because we always have these barriers up. And I think it's a very unhealthy thing for us on a regular basis to keep those walls and barriers up. It's good to have a guard present and to be observant of what's going on around you, but not ever letting anyone in.
And come to think of it, you and I actually had this entire episode play out yesterday, because another thing that I've seen is that people feel emotionally basically detached from other people's struggles. And there was a situation where there was a giant food bank and all of these cars and people walking towards this giant food bank. And in my head, actually out loud, I said to you like, oh, well, that's good. And then I said to you, I think in your head, you just said, well, no, it's not. And you didn't say that out loud, but that was just me hearing your silent skepticism. And that's not to call you out. That's just to point out the realities of, me having the empathetic view of things, and then you having that cynical view of things, because you see so much of this being taken advantage of from people on a day-to-day basis. Yeah,
and exactly what went through my head was like, well, probably 10% of those people in that line that are waiting there need that help. The other ones are just trying to take advantage of the system. Like, I start trying to crunch the numbers on who really needs it and who doesn't.
And there are ways to be able to stay grounded without losing your edge. And I think one of the most important things is to just separate the professional realism from your personal cynicism. And one way to go about this is to test yourself when you're in a crowd of new people. So let's say that you and your friends have planned to go out to dinner, and then they ask if it's okay to bring along another couple. So our natural inclination for you and I would be to basically we're monitoring everything about you. Like, you're sitting there, I am checking out all of the wrinkles in your forehead. I am looking at your baseline for behavior. I'm looking at the direction of your eyes and the things that you say when you speak. Like, I am constantly monitoring you. And so a way to be able to kind of separate all of this cynicism would be to not do that, or to try to not do that, because this isn't a work setting, right? You're not in for the most part, any potential danger in a situation like this. So just allow yourself to just be in the moment.
Yeah. And, one thing that's really good with us too, though, is other people say there's 8 people going to that, and then one couple wants to bring in that new couple to that circle. is we will purposefully engage them to be able to kind of like open up the door to try making them feel welcome, but we're also evaluating them very thoroughly.
I want to be the one who knows about them like first, right? And then everybody else is probably later going to have their opinion and then share like, that was such a nice couple or like whatever. And I'll be paying attention to that too. I'm always just like, and it's not necessarily in a cynical way. It's just in a behavioral analysis way, because that's one of my gigs in life. That's like one of my favorite. That's what I do for fun. Like some people go hunting, like I'm hunting your personality traits.
Yeah.
And I think that it's important too for us to just get real with that type of cynicism. And I could have not said nothing to you yesterday about these things that had come up, but I brought it to your attention on purpose. I think that awareness about our personal traits and behaviors, it's incredibly important for growth, but also for us to pay attention to and to kind of cross-reference. Like, should I be having these thoughts? Is this a valid concern for me right now? Is this normal? Is there something that I need to work on here? Or is it necessary for me to educate Ashley because of something that had happened?
Yeah, being able to have that awareness brought forward, it's not only taking it as this is how I should be responding to it one way or another. It's just everything's information, being able to take that information to figure out our responses in the future.
I hope you've gotten some value out of today's episode. If you have, do us a favor, drop a review, subscribe down below. And as always, know that I'm sending you a long, tight hug from my home to yours.